At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. Hello and welcome to the Phillies Talk Podcast, presented by Team Toyota. Corey Seidman and Ricky Batalico here with you as we enter the middle game of this 3-game series at Coors Field between the Phillies and the Rockies. And Ricky, the Phils got off to a good start. Rapid game in game 1. It was through 5 innings in like 50 minutes, just crazy. And then it kind of slowed down there at the end as both teams started scoring on the bullpens. But, you know, these last 2 weeks for the Phillies, 4 straight wins, followed by 6 straight losses, followed by 4 straight wins. Is that streakiness just in this team's DNA?
No, I think it's the inconsistency of the starting pitching, to be completely honest with you. What we're seeing right now is we're seeing the big guns starting to throw the ball well. And when that happens, and when you go out and throw strikes like Taijuan Walker did, that makes you a better pitcher. I think the one thing that has to be recognized is that it's okay to not strike out 10 guys. It's okay to have 3 strikeouts in a game and still pitch well. Trust your defense. That's what sometimes pitchers kind of get involved in. I was the same way. You wanted those strikeouts. They're sexy. They're more attractive. You just wanted those on your resume. But, I mean, as a starting pitcher, I think your goal should be to be in there as long as you possibly can. And what we have seen is the guys at the top of the rotation, the 1, the 2, the 3, which is Wheeler, Nola, and Taijuan Walker now, start going in a positive direction. I don't think we really got a good feel for that the first 3 weeks of the season. But what we are seeing is upticks in velocity for 2 of the guys. But we're also seeing Taijuan Walker now throwing strikes. I think that last night, I mean, you go into Coors Field. It's not the most, how do I put this? It's not the greatest place to go and pitch. I think last night was a little different. I think the hitters were a little bit antsy on both sides. And it just goes to show that if you throw good quality strikes, you can get a lot of outs quickly in Major League Baseball. Loved what I saw from Taijuan Walker last night. Obviously, you got Ranger coming back, which hopefully this is a good sign for the Phillies. And it just strengthens the starting rotation. But those top 3, once they get rolling, you're not going to see these lulls anymore.
Well, Aaron Nola, it's been 4 out of 5 quality starts. The one that wasn't was the game in Los Angeles where the Phillies blew that 5-0 lead. Zach Wheeler, his last 5 turns through the rotation, he's been locked in as well. And then with Walker, 2 starts ago, he went to throwing a ton of splitters. The splitter's his best pitch. It's his bread and butter. This season, early on, he was working on establishing his fastball early in games, and he was getting off to rough starts, both with, missing over the plate and missing out of the zone. Is it he's gone now back-to-back outings without walking anybody, which is a huge key for him. But is it as simple as him just using his best pitch more often like that?
I think it's as simple as getting to your comfort zone. I mean, most guys will go out there and their fastball is their comfort, locating a fastball. In all reality, a good located fastball is the best pitch in the world. I don't think you could really argue with that by any stretch of the imagination. But when you look at a guy like Taijuan Walker, where you're having trouble throwing strikes with your fastball, I think that's when it's time to go back to your bread and butter. And if he feels that comfortable throwing that pitch 54% of the time in a game, then so be it. Do it. If it's working, let it work. And the one thing I think for him that helps him is that with that pitch, you just throw it down the middle. You're not thinking like, I have to hit the outside edge with this. I have to hit the inside corner with this. What you're thinking is throw it down the middle and let everything kind of fall into place, because you're going to get the movement. You're going to get the drop. Sometimes it goes sideways. Sometimes it cuts a little bit. So what would I mean? Think about it. If you were pitching and you had that pitch, you just throw it right down the middle, let it move as it will.
Yeah, and Walker had said earlier in the season he was trying to get too cute, trying to like hit corners, and when you have stuff that moves naturally like that, I guess hitting corners might not always be, or trying to nip corners might not always be the best way to attack. One guy who's been just going right after hitters for the last week is Craig Kimbrell. I mean, his fastball has looked explosive over this last week. It's since he allowed that walk-off grand slam to Max Muncy, 3 scoreless outings. He struck out 7. The heater's 96, and he's just like riding it up in the zone just above the strike zone, missing bats both in the strike zone and above it. His breaking ball's also been sharp. I mean, if the Phillies get this version of Craig Kimbrell, it's going to make the Jose Alvarado loss temporarily, easier to offset.
And it's kind of funny because when you look at Kimbrel, his first 3 or 4 outings, maybe even 5 outings, everything you've heard me say, pitching is a Ferris wheel. It's not a carousel, nothing side to side. Kimbrel was going side to side a lot early on. Now all of a sudden he's found himself and everything is kind of staying back and then straight forward and down. And when he starts doing that, he gets a lot of carry on his fastball. And to me, that's his bread and butter. I mean, when he's throwing 96, 97 miles an hour and it's got extra jump, think about his stature, not a very big guy, which means he's putting a lot of legs into his pitches. If those legs get a little bit out of whack, you're going to see that ball pull over into the left-handed batter's box, which he was doing a lot. I haven't seen it now, I'm going to say in 4 appearances. And to me, that's all about mechanics. Somebody finally got in his head and said, hey, you know what? You straighten this thing out. You get all your momentum going in one direction. All that disappears. And I think it just brought a new, intensity level to him. He looks really comfortable going in there in the 9th inning right now. And I think it's his job to lose. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think right now, I know a lot of people are thinking, well, he'll get his 400 saves and then they'll switch it up. I think he's in a comfort zone. I think you leave him in there as long as you feel comfortable.
Well, yeah, when Alvarado was healthy, it was a mixture of Alvarado and Kimbrel based on where the left-handed or right-handed pockets were coming up. Like if it was tough lefties in the 8th, you'd see Alvarado in the 8th, Kimbrel in the 9th, and then vice versa. Now, Rob Thompson did say that Gregory Soto would slot into that Alvarado role with Alvarado out with elbow inflammation, meaning that, if the tough right-handers are up in the 8th inning, you'd see Kimbrel in the 8th, potentially Soto in the 9th. But I don't know, Kimbrel's looked really locked in these last 3 outings. I do wonder, though, as positive a sign as it is to see this version of Kimbrel with Alvarado out, and it does look like Alvarado might be able to be back here short term. He's gone 6 days without throwing, but he is with the Phillies on this road trip, first eligible to return on May 23rd. I wouldn't expect him to return right away, but the Phillies are feeling pretty optimistic about this injury. But I guess the thing, though, is that right now, Matt Strom cannot go back-to-back days. So, for example, Matt Strom pitches Friday in Game 1 of the series in Colorado. We're sitting down to record this before Game 2. Craig Kimbrell's appeared in 3 of the last 4 games. You would figure he's probably unavailable for a game like that. So now all of a sudden you're down to Soto and Dominguez. Gregory Soto, Sir Anthony Dominguez, you're probably having to rely on someone like Connor Brogdon maybe in the 7th inning of a game unless your starter takes you deep. So that's where you start to feel the ripple effect of just not having that 4th back end arm. And I mean, just let's face it, Jose Alvarado, like we've been saying, has been one of the most overpowering relievers in all of baseball. So kind of a bad situation for the Phils to lose them at a time like this.
Yeah, and I don't know what kind of pitch count Ranger's on. I didn't look that up. I don't know. Have you heard yet?
Well, the Phillies wanted him built. Initially, they wanted him built up to like 90 or so pitches when he came up. Then they shifted that to like, 75 or so pitches. And
so he's probably 80, 85 then.
But I don't even know if he's going to hit that high, because in his final start in the minors, he was so efficient through 5 innings that he had to go to the bullpen to throw 15 additional pitches to finish up. So he might be looking at like, 70-ish, 75. But again, that's a guy who can mow through a batting order. He might be able to get through 5 innings, 6 innings.
Especially the way these two teams are swinging. They're swinging early in the count, and Ranger loves to throw that fastball on the inside part of the plate. He's going to get a lot of ground balls if he's efficient on the inside to right-handed hitters. I think Ranger's just one of those guys that he's going to try to pound the strike zone. It could be very beneficial as long as his ball's not flattened out over the middle of the plate. I think he could be in really good shape, and he can get a lot of quick outs, and I think that's what he's probably bucking on right now. He kind of wants to go into a situation where he could get into the 5th inning and still be comfortable with his pitch count. That's what brings up, well, what if he doesn't? What if he only goes 3 or 4 innings? Then what do you do out in the bullpen? Then it gets thin. You're absolutely right. I mean, from anywhere from the fourth, fifth, sixth inning, I think it's a little thin. Even Connor Brogdon. I love Connor Brogdon. I think he's got a tremendous changeup, but when he's going in a little bit of a rut, he takes a long time to get out of those ruts. And that's one thing where he's got to learn to make those adjustments. He's been around long enough at the big league level to make adjustments almost on an immediate basis. I think the best at it on this team is Zach Wheeler. I think he can make an adjustment almost from pitch to pitch. You don't see that from everybody. But I mean, Connor Brogdon, that's one thing that he should be working on is, okay, I'm doing this wrong. How do I correct it while I'm standing on the mound? I don't need Caleb Cotham to come out and have to tell me what I'm doing. You have to know your body, know how to get yourself out of it. But he's one of those guys that could end up being very important to this team. And we've seen in the past, when he gets going in the right direction and kind of the head swells a little bit and he understands what he's doing out there, he gets better and better as time goes by. So I think he's a June, July type guy that sprouts. He's going to be that guy that sprouts a little bit later. The one thing I want to see is these guys pick each other up. I don't like the inherited runners thing, always bothers me. You have to be able to pick up your teammates. And we haven't really seen a lot of that this year by the Phillies. And Brogdon's been a victim. I know Bilotti hasn't been good in that type of situation, which he's back up now. We'll probably see him tonight. So it's just a matter of getting these guys all on the same page. Once they do that, smooth sailing.
Connor Brogdon, and this is his age 28 season. I think that last year that playoff run was really important for him. He had a low ERA in 8 2/3 innings in the postseason, and that had to help prove to him that not only does he belong in a big league bullpen in a big role, but that he can get outs against some of the best teams. You go back to the start of last season, his ERA is barely above 3. He's able to get righties and lefties out because of that changeup. So, yeah, he's an important piece of this bullpen. Ricky, Kyle Schwarber's been a big topic, as he was early last season. He got off to a relatively slow start, a comparatively slow start last season as well. But last 4 games, kind of getting there. Homered twice in the last 4 games, driven in 5 runs, reached base in 6 out of 15 plate appearances, and we're only a couple weeks away from June here.
There you go. You just said it. That's why, because we're getting towards June. He's got to start heating up at some point, and he swung the bat well last night. I mean, that home run was mammoth, to say the least. Had some really good carry on it. His balance looks a lot better. I don't know what's going on with his legs. We haven't heard anything on this, but at times he looks extremely off balance. And I don't know if it's still, if you remember last year, he had that knee issue. I don't know if that has come back or it's just a nagging thing for him, but sometimes he gets a little bit off balance. When that happens, I get a little bit nervous with him. But when he's on balance with his legs and his legs are sturdy and his base is really good, he's got the sweetest looking swing in Major League Baseball, I think, besides probably Freddie Freeman, because got to love Freddie Freeman. Who doesn't? But Schwarber's one of those guys where I like him in the, that 4 or 5 hole. He's in the 5 hole for the most part right now. But I think that's what they really got to concentrate on, keeping him there, letting him get some power numbers, letting him get some run production, getting some people on base in front of him is always beneficial. So, maybe his RBI numbers are way up at the end of the year, which I'm hoping.
So what do you make of what's going on with Trey Turner the last 6 weeks or so? Because he started out pretty well. Obviously, he had that very powerful World Baseball Classic that probably made Phillies fans think that he was going to just come out of the gate like gangbusters. For me, when I watch his at-bats, I don't know if the data bears this out, but it seems like he is extending the strike zone whenever there's a pitch just off the plate away and whenever there's a pitch just off the plate high. He's getting into bad counts, and he's just not seeing as many hittable pitches because of the situations he's kind of putting himself in.
I can't even count how many times it's been 3 pitches and he said he's walking back to the bench. That's not what you expect of this guy. I mean, what you really expect of him is let the ball get deep. He's kind of chasing after the ball. And what I mean by that is when it's pitched, he's fishing for it. He's not letting the ball come into the strike zone before he's starting his swing. He's getting out front. He's off balance. And his head is not staying still. So when that happens, when your head starts moving a little bit, that ball on the upper part looks like it's a good pitch, and then all of a sudden you can't get to it. He's having a lot of struggles with that pitch up top, but that's pitch recognition. That to me should be not easily fixed, but it is fixable. And I mean, think about this for a second. You can go back to Bryson Stott last year. Think about how many times he swung at a pitch chest high or above. I mean, uncountable, to say the least. You look at him from last year and the improvement that he made as the season went on and into the playoffs, and then the beginning of this year, completely different person. And it's the acknowledgement of the strike zone. It's knowing what makes you a better hitter. I think right now, Trey Turner was in that World Baseball Classic, and whatever he did was just natural. And I think doing that in the World Baseball Classic almost put more pressure on him to start the season like gangbusters. I just think I think he's pulling a Nick Castellanos right now from last year. You don't see the attitude, but what you do see is a guy that's trying to do too much. He's got plenty of weapons around him in this lineup. Take a deep breath, relax, just play the game of baseball like you know how.
Yeah, Castellanos, meanwhile, has been awesome. He's probably been the Phillies' most consistent hitter so far this season, doing it with average and power, with doubles, hitting the ball to both fields. He's made some impressive defensive plays, robbed a home run in Houston, and had a sliding catch earlier this week. He's just really locked in. Rob Thompson made a comment last week that he's just engaged. And when you have an engaged Nick Castellanos, this is what you're going to see. But, I mean, I think that kind of just speaks to, like, you know, the Phillies have a deep lineup, but most teams don't have everybody going at the same time. And that's obviously the case with the Phillies as well. When Kevin Gausman and the Blue Jays were in here earlier this week, Gausman made a comment after his start that he thinks the Phillies have the best lineup in the National League. Mm-hmm. And, you know, at first it was like, wow, that's an interesting compliment given the fact that the offense is like middle of the pack in runs per game. But really what it is, it seems like, is that certain guy, you have like 2 or 3 guys hot at one portion of the lineup, and then the rest of the lineup is cold. And then now you have Bryce Harper who's back and hot, and Castellanos is locked in. You have Turner slumping. You had Schwarber slumping for a while. Maybe now he's turning the corner as you lose JT Realmuto to that finger injury last night. So, I mean, I think that just speaks to the lineup depth, is that you have enough wiggle room when certain guys are going ice cold to maybe withstand it and play 500 baseball as the Phillies have to this point.
Yeah, I think that's going to be big in the long run because you do know that at some point there's going to be a 2 or 3 week period where they're all going right. And when that happens, it's going to be murderer's row for whoever those teams are that the Phillies are playing. Hopefully it's the Mets and Braves. I mean, that's what you're really looking forward to. And I just look at it this way. The more depth you have, the easier the game becomes. Because like you said, baseball is very hard. Hitting a baseball is very, very hard. And even the best, it's a struggle sometimes. So when you are struggling, I think it makes it easier if you know you have Castellanos, Schwarber, Harper, and everybody else behind you that could turn a game around with one swing of the bat. There's not many teams in Major League Baseball when you look around that have, I would say, 7 guys in one swing of the bat could absolutely turn the game in a different direction. And that should make it easier on these Phillies hitters. As time goes by, it's going to get better because they're going to know each other better and better as days go by. Obviously, a guy like Trey Turner, he doesn't know everybody right now. He feels like he's probably letting the team down right now. That's not how these guys are on this club. This club is all about who's got the W at the end of the day. And I think that will be beneficial in the long run for Trey Turner.
Ricky, with Matt Strom going back and forth, he was relieving in spring training and he was starting the first 5 weeks. And now he's back in the bullpen, and it's kind of unclear specifically what his role is going to be. Is it going to be high leverage in the meantime with Alvarado out, or is it going to be multiple innings? Rob Thompson said that he's only comfortable right now going with him like 2-3 times per week maximum. I'm just curious, like as a former reliever, like how much would that? Strom has said all the right things. Like from a mentality standpoint, this is what he wants to do. He wants to do anything he needs to do to help the team succeed. But just like the wear and tear on your arm when you're going from different roles, can that add up? I mean, do you think a guy like Matt Strom is physically feeling like the brunt of what he did not expect to happen the first 6 weeks of the regular season?
I would say yes, but Rob Thompson is no stranger to Ranger Suarez, who has done basically the exact same type of thing. Although Ranger, if I'm not wrong, went from setup guy to middle reliever to long guy, middle relief, setup, closer, starter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of different jobs to have in one season. And Ranger did that about the best that you possibly can. I've never seen anybody do it as well as he had, not in one season. But I mean, as for Strom, I think the one thing that you have to recognize is that he doesn't change the way he pitches when he goes from one job to another. Every time out, he's attacking. He's a general, like to me, he's like an adrenaline junkie. He wants the ball. He wants to go in and fire. He's going to attack you, go with his best stuff against your best. And if he gets beat, so be it. And he will move on from that. But I think I like his mentality as a bullpen guy more than a starter. But I think in the sense that he doesn't change mechanics. He doesn't change anything when he goes from one job to another. And with the guidance of Rob Thompson and Caleb Cotham, because of the fact that they've already had guys do this before, he's not going to go back to starting. Let's face that. I mean, number one, innings-wise, he's definitely not going back to starting this year. And the one thing you're going to get from him is solid, attacking bullpen relief.
So the Phillies have dealt with some key injuries here earlier in the season, but they're not alone. I mean, the NL East, all three of the top teams, the Braves, Mets, and Phillies, have numerous guys on the injured list, important players. The Braves are without Max Fried and Kyle Wright in their rotation for at least a month. Raisel Iglesias, their closer, just came back last week. The Mets have had Justin Verlander on the shelf the first month, and Max Scherzer got scratched his past start. He's dealing with neck issues. I saw the Marlins lost Jazz Chisholm today. The Mets also, by the way, are so thin in their bullpen that they're having David Robertson pitch like 2 innings in some of his save opportunities. So the NL East, really, all the teams are feeling the effect of these early season injuries, and the Phillies have a big trip coming up at the end of this month. In less than 2 weeks' time, they go to Atlanta for 4, New York for 3, and then Washington for 3. And you play your division so much less this season that those head-to-head matchups become even more important. It almost seems like the Phillies might be catching these teams at a good time.
Yeah, it's all about taking advantage of what's going wrong with other teams. No matter how you look at it. Certain times you go into a team, they're not pitching well. You take advantage of that. Certain times they're not hitting well. You take advantage of it. They have injuries. That's not your fault. You take advantage of that. I mean, I think the Mets, basically were shot in the foot when Edwin Diaz went down. I really do. I think that was the beginning of the end for the Mets. I can't see the Mets holding up the way they are constructed right now, not for the long haul. Obviously with Scherzer and Verlander, they're not exactly spring chickens. I think you have to remember that, because I know Verlander's throwing the ball well, but I mean, you know what? How long is that going to last? I mean, really, how long is it going to last? We saw Verlander in the World Series. I didn't think he was anything special in the World Series. Yes, he had a great regular season last year, but the longevity of the games and the longevity of the season kind of caught up to him. The Braves, on the other hand, they have a different team. That, for some reason, watch this. They're going to find a way to stay up top. They will, because they've always done it. They've had good farm systems for a long period of time, and they've always had those guys that step in for injuries or step in for players that aren't playing well. And when you have that, you have an extra advantage. You have confidence. You have, you also have Ronald Acuna, which doesn't hurt the situation. So I just look at the Braves, and I think they're still going to be there in the end. I think the Phillies, if they get on a little streak here, they will give them a run for their money.
Yeah, Austin Riley hasn't done pretty much anything yet, and the Braves are still off to the start they're off to. Acuna, probably player of the month in the month of April, and an early season MVP candidate. And then with the Mets, Justin Verlander, he is a very good regular season pitcher. He has been the last few years and remains so. But just one thing to note is that last year, even as dominant as he was with the Astros, he was a 6-inning guy. They rarely extended him beyond 6 innings. I don't expect the Mets to do that too frequently, given the injuries they're dealing with. And then when you have a thin bullpen and you're without your closer, that means you're going to your Ottavino and Robertson all the time. So it's just crazy to think about with a team that has a $365 million payroll like the Mets, but there are a lot of holes in that roster. So when Phillies fans get frustrated when they say, how do they spend this much money and they're a 500 or barely above 500 team? Well, it's pretty hard to build a winning club.
Yeah, take a look up north. They spent who knows how much money. I forgot how much they spent, but it was a lot of money up there in New York. They don't look like world beaters. So, I mean, everybody's just got to relax. It's still early in the season. The Phillies could go on a little mini run right now, in all honesty. I mean, you have 2 more against the Rockies. Then you go into San Francisco, which Phillies, I can't remember them playing great there very much. And it's always low-scoring games up there. It's the weather's colder. The wind's always blowing, not a great place to hit, but we'll see. I think when you look at it, you're going to get some good pitching from the Phillies there. I think that could help them out a little bit. This is a nice time to make a run. I mean, if you go on this trip, there's a very good chance that they could sweep the Rockies. You take 3 from them and 2 out of 3 up in San Francisco, you're feeling a lot better about yourself coming home.
Yeah, we'll see what happens the rest of this West Coast trip. But to this point, the Phillies have not played their best baseball, and yet they're a 500 team. And entering Saturday night, there's actually only 5 teams in the National League that have a better record than them. So there's a lot of teams off to slow starts, pretty much every team in that NL Central. So thanks a lot for listening to this Phillies Talk podcast or watching it on YouTube. And Ricky and I will be back next week.